He betrayed me, stole my love, my money, and tried to kill my parents for an inheritance he didn't deserve. I died heartbroken. But fate gave me a second chance. I woke up at 18 and this time I'm not here to beg for love. I'm here to ruin him. Piece by piece, lie by lie. He took everything from me. Now I'm taking it all back. This isn't revenge. This is my empire. I never thought dying would feel like this. Not the fall, not the rush of wind or the blur of lights as I plummeted from the 22nd floor, but the silence. The kind of silence that feels like an echo of everything you once were, hollowed out into nothing. I had died betrayed, ruined, discarded like yesterday's trash. And then I opened my eyes. And I was 18 again. The sun was too bright. My school blazer itched at the back of my neck. And standing in front of me, sneering, holding the very same bottle of mineral water I once offered with trembling hands, was Damian Holt. The boy I had once loved so blindly I would have sold my soul to make him smile. "Take your dirty money back," he snapped, loud enough to draw eyes. "I don't want it." The crowd around the Northbridge Academy gates shifted, slowing like a car crash in progress. Students peered curiously. Some pulled out their phones. Someone in the back muttered, "Isn't that Vivian Cross? Holt's lapdog is back, huh?" My chest constricted, but not with heartbreak. No, not anymore. This time it was rage. Without hesitation I stepped forward and yanked the black card from his hand, slipping it back into my coat pocket. "Perfect," I said coldly. "I didn't want to give it to you anyway." He blinked. "What? And this?" I tilted my head toward the bottle of water I'd offered moments ago. "Whoever still feels like playing savior can take it. I'm done." I turned on my heel. Behind me gasps. And then the whispers began. I could hear them crawling up the walls of the school. Did she just walk away? She didn't even cry. Vivian Cross must have finally grown a spine. I smiled bitterly. They only knew. The last time this moment happened, I'd begged Damian to forgive me. I had offered him money, gifts, anything, thinking if I just loved him enough he'd love me back. Instead he used me, destroyed my family, and left me with nowhere to be buried. Never again. His voice rang out behind me, louder this time, trying to claw back the attention. "Vivian, you think you can just throw money and walk off like you're some kind of goddess?" I turned slowly. My eyes locked with his. The same pretty face. Same perfect tousled hair. The same arrogance he always wore like cologne. And for the first time in either life, I slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the courtyard like a gunshot. Gasps exploded all around us. "You arrogant piece of trash," I said, voice icy. "Who gave you the right to speak to me like that?" His hand flew to his cheek, red and already swelling. "You're insane." "Insane was loving a leech like you for half my life," I said sharply. "Insane was funding your education, your lifestyle, your sick mother. Insane was sacrificing my future for a parasite." He lunged, hand raised. Instinctively the crowd flinched. But I didn't move. "You want to hit me?" I dared, stepping into his space. "Do it. Go ahead. You'll prove exactly what kind of coward you are." He hesitated. Of course he did. Because Damian Holt didn't have the guts to fight unless he was sure he'd win. Slowly his hand lowered. He couldn't understand what had changed. Where was the pathetic rich girl who used to cry in front of him, pleading for a smile? Where was the girl who bought him everything he could never afford? Phones, laptops, designer clothes. Gone. "Look at you," I said, voice sharp. "Still trying to look noble for the crowd, right? Poor boy, proud heart. The martyr of Eastwell. But in reality, you took everything. Every damn thing I gave you." Murmurs rippled again. "What's she saying? Wait, she bought him all that? I thought he was self-made. He wore those limited edition sneakers last week." Damian's jaw clenched. "You're making this up." "Am I?" I smiled sweetly. "You sure didn't seem so noble when you snuck into Valemont Gardens every weekend to sleep in the apartment I paid for. Or when you used the gold card I gave you to order lunch for your friends and acted like it was yours. That's not." "Oh, and let's not forget Riley," I continued. "Your darling little sister. Wearing designer bags and makeup at 16. I suppose that was hard work too, huh?" Damian's face paled. Now the crowd wasn't just watching. They were judging. Laughing. Vivian's finally exposing him. No wonder he always had the latest stuff. Freeloader. Total fake. Damian stepped forward, eyes wild. Stop it. You're just mad because I don't love you. You're trying to ruin me because you can't have me. I wouldn't touch you if you were dipped in gold and gift-wrapped, I spat. You think you're special? You're not even average. His mouth opened and closed. He looked around, desperate for someone to defend him. But no one did. Because in that moment they saw what I had. A boy who played victim in public but pocketed everything in private. And he had just been exposed by the very girl he used to humiliate. He pointed at me, teeth clenched. You're going to regret this, Vivian. You think you're so clever now, but you're just a spoiled brat playing drama queen. You disgust me. I smirked. Then you'll really hate what comes next. I pulled out my phone. You still live in that free apartment I gave you, right? I said casually. The one under my name? He froze. Don't worry. I've already changed the passcode and told the security guards not to let you in. Your towels and toothbrush are waiting for pickup at the gate. His eyes bulged. Oh, and your mom's special treatment at Eastwell General? I added. Cancelled. The nurse will probably call soon. And the Holt family's free housing near campus? Already revoked. Time to find a new place. Dead silence. Even the breeze held its breath. Welcome to life without me, Damian, I said. Let's see how well you survive. And then I walked away. For real this time. Later that afternoon I sat quietly in the back of the classroom as the whispers buzzed around me like bees. Students tried to act subtle, but I saw the way they glanced at me. Some with awe, others with fear. Vivian Cross actually slapped Damian Holt. She cancelled his housing, hospital bills, everything. She's cold. She's brilliant. And I just stared out the window. I had a second chance now. And I was going to use it. Not for love. Not for vengeance. But to build the empire my family deserved. To protect them. To rise beyond the small petty games of the past. Let Damian beg. Let Riley scheme. Let the whole world spin. I had already died once for them. This time I'd be the one holding the knife. The moment I stepped back into the Cross estate, something inside me cracked open. The manicured hedges, the old oak tree that shaded the courtyard, the scent of my mother's favorite jasmine flowers blooming by the fountain. It all hit me like a freight train of nostalgia. I hadn't realized how much I missed this place. In my last life I came back here one final time, when the property was being seized. I had walked through empty halls. Echoing. Lifeless. All because I gave everything, my money, my name, my heart, to a man who destroyed us. But not this time. This time I was back. And this time I was taking it all back. Vivian. My mother's voice echoed through the foyer as I stepped in. Is that you, sweetheart? I dropped my bag and rushed forward. Mom. I threw my arms around her, burying my face in the silk fabric of her blouse. She gasped softly, surprised by the hug. Oh, honey, what's gotten into you? Did something happen? Gut. Her voice. Her warmth. She was alive. Her heart hadn't broken yet from my father's downfall. She hadn't wasted away from grief. I just missed you, I whispered into her shoulder. A lot. She chuckled softly and kissed my head. Well, I missed you too, darling. I'm glad you came home early. I pulled back, wiping my eyes before she could see the tears. Is Dad home? She nodded. He's out in the garden with Mr. Whitmore and Mr. Ellison. The exact people I needed to see. I walked through the house with purpose, the weight of memory making each step feel both heavy and urgent. There they were, Dad and the uncles, lounging under the patio umbrella with iced tea and thick business folders. I paused in the doorway. In my last life, this was the day Dad dismissed their renewable energy project as a long shot. He said gas engines would never go out of style. That electric cars were a fad. He had no idea that this exact venture, spearheaded by Mr. Whitmore, would one day change the global market. That he had a chance to invest early and missed it. This time I wouldn't let him. Vivian. Dad looked up surprised. You're home early. I missed everyone, I said with a smile and took a seat beside him. Mr. Whitmore chuckled. We were just talking about green infrastructure. Your dad says he's not convinced. I turned to Dad. Why not? He frowned thoughtfully. It's untested. A risk. You don't build a fortune by chasing every trend. I smiled sweetly. And yet the government just approved the clean tech bill. By 2028, electric vehicles will outsell gas. That's not a trend, Dad. It's a transition. They all turned to look at me. Mr. Whitmore's brows lifted. She's sharp. I'm studying finance, I said. Dean Hallberg at Northbridge has been quoting international white papers and policy trends all month. Renewable energy is the next frontier. It's not a question of if, but when. My dad blinked. He was always cautious, yes, but he loved hearing I was actually paying attention in school. And, I added, voice soft, you've always wanted to do something meaningful with the cross name. What could be more meaningful than leading the next energy revolution? He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. I suppose you have a point. I clasped his hand. Please, Dad. Trust me. Mr. Whitmore watched us quietly before clearing his throat. Mr. Cross, if you're in, we'd love to have your family on board. You'll have original shares. Founding partner status. My dad finally nodded. All right. Let's do it. I nearly exhaled an entire lifetime of regret right there. This time we did it. I went back inside, giddy with satisfaction. The future I had lost was finally tipping back into my hands. Just as I was heading toward the stairs, the butler approached. Miss Vivian, there's a girl at the gate. She insists on seeing you. I frowned. Name. She said she's Riley Holt. Of course. I walked out to the front courtyard and spotted her immediately. Riley stood near the fountain, arms folded across her chest, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a knockoff fashion blog. White mini dress, sunglasses on her head, and an attitude that reeked of entitlement. Vivian, she called, flipping her hair. Finally. I didn't speak. She marched toward me with that familiar superiority. Do you even know what you did? Damian didn't show up to any of his afternoon classes. He's devastated. He won't even talk to me. I raised an eyebrow. I'm supposed to care? She rolled her eyes. You've always had a temper. But fine. Let's not fight. I came to offer a solution. Oh, I'm dying to hear this. She lifted her chin. Give me that diamond necklace you got for your birthday, the one from Winston's? I'll talk to Damian for you. Calm him down. If he softens, I'll convince him to forgive you. I stared at her, dumbfounded by the sheer audacity. That necklace is worth 8 figures. He shrugged. And Damian's pride is priceless. I laughed. You really think I'm that desperate? Riley narrowed her eyes. Come on, Vivian. You know I've always helped you two patch things up. Don't be selfish. Selfish. This girl once drained me dry. Bags, shoes, jewelry, makeup, and when Damian crushed me and left me with nothing, she stood there clapping. Fine, I said. Wait here. I'll go get your surprise. She brightened immediately. Finally, some sense. I ran inside not for a necklace, but for backup. In the lounge, my father was still deep in conversation with Mr. Ellison and Mr. Whitmore. Dad, I said sweetly. Can I borrow a couple of your men? Just a quick errand. Of course. Take whoever you need. 2 large men in suits followed me out to the gate. Riley's smirk turned confused the moment she saw them. What's this? Oh, I thought I'd finally get help to take back everything I ever gave you. She blinked. What? I turned to the men. We'll be heading to the Holtz rental. I'll show you what's mine. Her face went pale. You're joking. I stepped closer. I gave you enough to dress like an heiress for 3 years. You wore me like a costume. But guess what? I'm not your sponsor anymore. He sputtered. You can't take. Oh, but I can. And I will. She tried to lunge at me, but the men stepped between us instantly. You conniving little. No, I said, leaning close. You don't get to call me that. Not after you told me to hurry up and jump when I stood on that rooftop. Her eyes widened in shock. Yeah, I remember. We arrived at the Holtz neighborhood just as twilight fell. The building was as decrepit as I remembered, cracked walls, rusted balconies, and a smell of mildew in the air. Damian was already on the steps, trying to carry a broken TV down the stairs. He froze when he saw me. You. Me, I said, stepping onto the property I used to pay for. Here to collect. His face turned red with rage and humiliation. You think this is funny? You really think humiliating me is going to make you feel better? No, I said with a smile. But watching you carry a couch and sneakers I bought does. The movers began emptying the place. TV, fridge, couch, dining table, bed, even the curtains. Riley screamed. You can't do this. Oh, but I can, I said, reaching for her wrist and yanking off a gold bracelet. That one too. Jason's mom came running out of the back room. What's going on here? I looked her over. Necklace, earrings, watch. All from me. Taking my things, I said, reaching for the necklace. She shrieked. Thief. I have every receipt. Try me. Riley lunged. I moved aside. She fell face first into the half-empty jewelry box I had once given her. I picked it up, calmly stuffed it into my purse and smiled. This was your surprise, Riley. Hope it was big enough for you. That night, as I sat in my room filing receipts and cataloging the repossessed items, I felt something shift deep inside me. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I wasn't just reacting. I was acting. I was reclaiming what was mine. And I was just getting started. There are days that change your life in ways you don't realize until it's too late. And then there are days where you know, that if you say the wrong thing or make the wrong choice, the future will slide through your fingers like sand. That day, standing behind the patio curtain watching my father hesitate over Mr. Whitmore's pitch for Whitmore Energy Solutions, I knew it was one of those days. In my past life, this moment slipped by unnoticed. My father had sipped his tea, politely declined, and turned the conversation to real estate development. I remembered sitting in my room that night, completely unaware that he'd just walked away from what would become the country's most valuable green tech company. This time I wouldn't let it happen. Mr. Whitmore sat with a folder spread open between them, detailing figures and forecasts. We're at the forefront of solid-state battery research, he was saying. The government's environmental reform plan will back this heavily within the next 2 years. We already have engineers from Eastwell Tech and overseas investors watching closely. My father leaned back, skepticism etched in the creases of his forehead. Batteries? That all sounds good in theory, Miles, but how many ordinary citizens are going to give up their gas engines? The rumble of an 8-cylinder V8, that's not going away anytime soon. I stepped forward before he could dismiss the topic again. Dad, I said gently. Can we talk for a second? He turned surprised. Vivian? Sure. We stepped into the sunroom just out of earshot. I closed the door carefully behind us. I know what you're going to say, he started, and I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you're still in school, sweetheart. This isn't. Dad, please. I looked him straight in the eye. I need you to trust me. He blinked. You've always said the Cross family should stand for more than just wealth. That we should build something lasting, something meaningful. I paused. Well, this is it. He frowned. It's risky. I took a breath. So is staying stagnant while the rest of the world moves on. I pulled out my phone and opened my class notes, scrolling to the section I'd copied from Dean Hallberg's recent lecture. Look. By 2028, renewable energy sources will power over 50% of global infrastructure. Solid-state battery technology is forecasted to replace lithium-ion as the new gold standard. Early investors are positioned to see 20x returns. That's not me making it up. That's research, Dad. He squinted at the screen, reading it line by line. Besides, I added, Uncle Whitmore is offering founding equity. That alone is reason enough. My father didn't speak for a moment. Then slowly he looked up at me with something new in his eyes. Pride. You've grown up, huh? He said softly. Not chasing that Holt boy anymore? I smiled faintly. Let's just say my priorities have changed. He rubbed the back of his neck. All right. If you believe in this, I'll back it. My eyes stung with emotion. Thank you, Dad. We walked back out to the patio together. My father picked up the folder again and said with renewed authority, Miles, count me in. Mr. Whitmore looked stunned, then beamed. You won't regret this. No, I thought. You really won't. 2 days later, the contracts were signed. And just like that, Cross & Company became a major backer of Whitmore Energy Solutions. The minute my pen hit that signature line, it felt like my past life had cracked open. Like 100 wrong steps had just been rewritten. I could already see the path diverging. In my previous life, Mr. Whitmore didn't receive funding until 3 years later, after selling most of his equity to outsiders just to keep the project afloat. By then, Damian had weaseled his way in, worming his name onto the board through fake credentials and strategic brown-nosing. Not this time. This time we were ahead of him. This time he would be the outsider looking in. That same afternoon, while I was reviewing the project brief at my desk, my phone buzzed with a message from the school secretary. Ms. Cross, your request to join Professor Hallberg's private research group has been approved. Please report to Lab 4 on Monday after class. My heart leapt. This was it. The group Damian had fought tooth and nail to get into in my past life. He never even made it. I had pulled strings for him, begged actually, and when he failed to qualify I still paid for private mentors to teach him the materials. What did he do? Used me as a stepping stone and tossed me aside when he saw a better opportunity. But now I'd be the one holding the door and slamming it in his face. Monday afternoon came fast. Lab 4 smelled of chemicals, ink and fresh ambition. High ceilings, 3 white boards scrawled with formulas, tables stacked with prototype cells and testing modules. Felt like walking into the future. Professor Hallberg welcomed me with a nod. Vivian Cross, right? I've heard good things. I spotted the others in the room. 7 students, mostly older, mostly male except for one. At the far bench, hunched over a microscope and sketching notes, was Caleb Reeves. He looked up as I approached. Eyes blue-gray, tired but alert. A quiet intensity. Still wearing a second-hand hoodie and jeans that had seen better days. Vivian, he said surprised. Didn't expect to see you here. I smiled. Nice to see a familiar face. We worked in silence for a while, exchanging occasional glances as we calibrated the electrode analyzer. Caleb was methodical, brilliant, and unlike Damian, unbothered by status. He didn't posture. He didn't boast. When he struggled with a faulty circuit board, I leaned over and adjusted it. You were off by half a degree, I said. Resistor placement matters. He grinned. Thanks. Most people wouldn't bother helping this scholarship kid. I'm not most people. He paused then nodded. I see that now. And in that moment, I saw him differently too. In my last life I remembered Caleb only as the quiet guy Damian always mocked. He had died tragically young of stomach cancer. The rumor was that he'd saved too much money on food, worked 2 jobs and never got treatment in time. Right before he passed, he developed a breakthrough battery prototype, and no one ever noticed. But I had noticed. This time I'd change that. That night I returned home with a new plan. I waited until my father was in the lounge with a drink and sat down across from him. Dad, I began, I want to personally sponsor a student researcher. Caleb Reeves. He's brilliant, quiet, hardworking. He just doesn't have the support. My father arched a brow. Is this about? It's not about pity, I interrupted. It's about strategy. I leaned forward, voice steady. If we support Caleb now, mentorship, stipend, healthcare, he'll remember it. And if his project ever takes off, I want Cross & Company to be his first partner. My dad looked impressed. You're really serious about this? I nodded. He's worth the bet. And he was. Caleb reminded me that not all good people get what they deserve. But this time I could change that too. 3 weeks passed. Whitmore Energy Solutions officially filed for Phase 2 patents. Cross & Company's legal team finalized the equity partnership. Caleb started gaining traction in the lab and was now invited to represent our team at the annual Green Tech Summit. And Damian? Well, Damian had been suspiciously quiet. Until one morning I stepped into the school courtyard and saw a glossy banner stretched across the front steps. Holt Technologies. Sustainable innovation for a brighter tomorrow. I froze. There he was, Damian Holt. Slick suit. New haircut. Fake investor smile. Standing beside a man I recognized immediately. Vincent Carrick. A rival investor of Mr. Whitmore. The same man who once tried to buy Whitmore Energy out when the company was in debt in my past life. Of course Damian found him. Of course he was trying to build a competing company. My jaw clenched. But I didn't move. I didn't confront him. Because I already knew how this would end. He was borrowing trouble. And this time the only thing waiting for him at the finish line was ruin. The moment I saw Damian Holt standing beside Vincent Carrick, I knew the war had officially begun. He wasn't just floating around anymore. He had aligned himself with a known corporate shark. A man who gutted companies for sport, picked their bones clean, then walked away richer. And Damian? He was grinning like a star pupil on award day, soaking in the spotlight he hadn't earned. I didn't need to confront him. Not yet. Because Damian didn't know something crucial. I'd already taken the only piece of the puzzle that could ever make him dangerous. Caleb Reeves. The week following the summit announcement was a blur of lab meetings, patent filing discussions and late-night design reviews. Caleb and I spent more time together than I ever thought I would with anyone again. We weren't just collaborators. We were quietly becoming something more. It didn't start romantically, not exactly. It started with shared laughter over failed prototypes. With the way he handed me a fresh coffee at 7:30 a.m., already knowing I took it with almond milk and no sugar. With the way I noticed how he always took the broken chair in the lab without a word. One afternoon we stayed back late after everyone else had left. I was adjusting the current stabilizer on a sample prototype when I noticed him sitting quietly on the floor beside the window, sketching something in a worn-out notebook. "You draw?" I asked, sliding down beside him. He nodded. "Mostly schematics. But sometimes, ideas. Things I want to build. Things I probably never will." I took the notebook gently from his hands and flipped through the pages. There were battery schematics, sure, but also a sketched bicycle with a foldable solar panel, a portable medical cooler that ran on kinetic motion, and what looked like a prosthetic arm designed for rural environments. "These are incredible," I murmured. He shrugged, embarrassed. "They're just ideas." "No," I said firmly. "They're plans. They just haven't come to life yet." He looked at me, quiet for a long beat. "You actually believe that, don't you? I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't." He smiled softly. "You're not like the girl everyone whispers about in the hallway." "Who do they think I am?" I asked, amused. "Some spoiled heiress who uses her father's money to buy status." He paused. "But you're in the trenches. Working. Thinking. Showing up." I met his gaze and said, "You're not like the scholarship kid they think you are either." From that moment something shifted. Not love exactly, but respect. And sometimes, that's stronger. That Friday, Professor Hallberg sent out a formal announcement. Caleb Reeves and Vivian Cross to co-lead the Whitmore-backed battery innovation team. The title alone turned heads. Suddenly, everyone on campus was whispering again, but this time not with pity or mockery. There was curiosity, admiration, even envy. "And Damian?" He finally cracked. I was leaving the engineering building when I heard footsteps behind me. Fast. Agitated. "Vivian." I didn't turn around. "Vivian, wait." I paused on the steps, turned slowly and faced the man who'd once reduced me to nothing. Damian's expression was the perfect cocktail of disbelief and fury. "You knew about Carrick, didn't you?" he hissed. I raised an eyebrow. "Of course I did. You knew he was my investor and still got Whitmore too." "I didn't get anyone to do anything. I simply invested in a better future." "You invested in a bankruptcy waiting to happen." He stepped closer. "Caleb Reeves was supposed to be mine." I laughed. "That's your problem, Damian. You think people are possessions. You didn't even speak to Caleb until you saw headlines about him. I offered him a full-time role. Salary. Bonus. Patent rights. And he turned you down because he saw through you," I said coldly. "Just like I did." His jaw flexed. "So this is revenge?" "No," I said softly. "This is me reclaiming what was mine. My dignity. My name. My power." His eyes darkened. "Don't think this makes you better than me." "I don't need to think it," I said. "I know it." Later that night I got a call from Caleb. "Hey," he said. "We're running one of the first viability tests tomorrow morning." I was thinking. I waited. "Would you want to present it with me? Side by side?" I asked. "Always," he said quietly. The lab buzzed the next morning with anticipation. The test was simple. If the voltage curve stabilized past the 3-hour mark, our new battery design would pass its first critical hurdle. I stood beside Caleb, both of us watching the monitor. The room held its breath. Hour 1, stable. Hour 2, no overheating. Hour 3, asterisk. The curve held. Professor Hallberg clapped. "That's it. You two just made history." Caleb turned to me and grinned. "We did it." And that's when it happened. No grand declaration. No swelling music. He just looked at me like I was gravity. And suddenly I wasn't falling anymore. But nothing good lasts without someone trying to ruin it. The next week, Damian appeared again, but this time he wasn't alone. He held a press conference in the school auditorium with Carrick, unveiling a supposedly revolutionary prototype that bore an uncanny resemblance to Caleb's earliest blueprints. The crowd applauded. I narrowed my eyes. This wasn't just theft. It was personal. Afterward, I found Caleb pacing in the lab, fists clenched. "That was my design," he muttered. "My old journal. I think he got hold of it when I left my bag in the library." "Can you prove it's yours?" I asked. "I don't have a time-stamped copy," he admitted. "I was going to submit it after the next stage of testing." I thought for a moment. "Then we do it differently." He looked at me confused. "How?" "We don't play defense," I said. "We go bigger. Real results. Publish the patent. Announce publicly. Beat him to the punch so hard he chokes on it." Caleb's expression shifted. Determination. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "I'll pull in every contact, every resource. You keep working. Let's show them what real innovation looks like." The next 10 days were chaos, but the good kind. I had my father reach out to a top-tier patent attorney. We expedited the submission. Cross & Company's PR team crafted a clean, powerful statement about young innovation, grit, and scientific integrity. Caleb? He didn't sleep. He coded, tested, sketched, rewired, simulated, pushing harder than I'd ever seen anyone work. On launch day, we released a video of our live demo. Then we filed the patent. Then we published a paper through Professor Hallberg's international academic partners. By sundown, it was everywhere. Breakthrough battery tech developed by cross-backed student team. From scholarship to spotlight. Caleb Reeves redefines energy. And Damian? His press release fizzled out like flat soda. Carrick pulled funding within 72 hours. One evening after the dust had settled, I found Caleb sitting on the bench outside Lab 4, staring up at the stars. I sat beside him. "I got accepted," he said. I blinked. "Accepted? To the Whitmore Fellowship. 3-year research grant. They want me to lead the new R&D arm. And," he looked at me, "they want you to oversee the business development side." I stared. "This is real." He nodded. "I told them I wouldn't go without you." I stared harder. "Caleb. I know this started as payback," he said quietly. "But it became more than that." He looked at me, then reached out and took my hand. "I want to build something real, with you." I didn't say anything right away. Because the version of me that jumped from that building once believed love was weakness. That giving your heart meant giving your power. But this felt different. Because Caleb never demanded anything from me. He just showed up. Every day. And maybe that was the difference. I squeezed his hand. "Let's build it all." The fall of Damian Holt should have been inevitable. Predictable. Quiet. But of course, someone like Damian never went down without staging one final scene. And this time he didn't just want redemption. He wanted resurrection. It began with a whisper. A low hum through the halls of Northbridge Academy's innovation wing. Someone mentioned a new company. Someone else said there was venture capital. By the time I walked into the lab that Monday, 3 students had already forwarded me an email invitation to a launch event. Introducing Nexenvolt Labs, redefining the future of clean energy. Founder, Damian Holt. Backed by $5 million in seed funding. Caleb leaned over my shoulder, read the email once and muttered, "He doesn't give up, does he?" "No," I replied, deleting it. "Cockroaches never do." But the logo in the email caught my eye. A blue lightning bolt. Simplistic. Thick. And familiar. Too familiar. Because I'd seen it before. In Caleb's notebook. The one Damian had accidentally borrowed weeks ago. That evening I pulled up Nexenvolt's landing page and narrowed my eyes. He'd done it again. Stolen the language, the design concepts. Even the mission statement was eerily close to what we submitted in our patent release. Worse, he was offering internships to Northbridge students. A shiny alternative to cross-backed R&D programs. And since many students didn't know the truth, the buzz was growing. "What's the plan?" Caleb asked as we sat in the lab going over datasheets. I stared at the screen, my mind already moving 5 steps ahead. "We don't retaliate," I said calmly. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because Damian's doing exactly what I want him to." Caleb tilted his head. "He's desperate to prove he can succeed without me." But desperation makes people sloppy. 3 days later, Nexenvolt hosted a flashy press event in downtown Eastwell. Damian stood at a podium wearing a tailored navy suit and that fake polished smile I used to fall for. Beside him stood his new backer, a man named Grayson Locke. On the surface, Grayson was a wealthy philanthropist turned tech investor. But I'd seen the name before, in a confidential report sent by our attorney. Grayson Locke had a trail of failed ventures, unpaid staff, and lawsuits long enough to wrap around the city twice. He was a poison pill wrapped in a Rolex. And Damian? He looked thrilled to be drinking from the cup. Today, Damian declared into the mic, we unveil not just technology but legacy. Nexenvolt will power a better future. People clapped. Cameras flashed. A few reporters looked genuinely intrigued. But I watched Damian closely. He was glowing. Triumphant. He actually thought he'd won. I didn't bother attending in person. Instead, I sat at home with my laptop and waited. Because while Damian launched Nexenvolt to the public, I launched a quiet, private investigation into his contracts. By Friday morning I had what I needed. 3 red flags in the investment agreement with Locke. 1. Clause 19. In the event of failed prototype deployment within 90 days, the founder forfeits intellectual property rights. 2. Clause 26. The founder assumes all legal liability for patent violations. 3. Clause 31. Inability to provide original design timestamps constitutes breach of contract. It was laughable. If Damian had even read the fine print, he would have known this wasn't a partnership. It was a ticking time bomb. And he'd signed it all. He'd walked right into a trap and I hadn't even said it. But I would light the fuse. The following week I bumped into Damian near the Eastwell University Tech Center. He was surrounded by junior students handing out Nexenvolt flyers like candy. The moment he saw me, his smile faltered, but only for a second. Vivian, he said coolly. Enjoying the show? Very much, I replied. You always said I had potential. Glad you've come around. I stepped closer. Tell me, Damian, did you read Clause 26 before signing with Locke? His eyes flickered. What? The one about liability for patent infringement, I said sweetly. Just wondering how you plan to explain to your investors that your flagship design was sketched by Caleb Reeves months ago. His face darkened. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out a printed, notarized copy of Caleb's journal page. Dated. Time-stamped. Witnessed by Professor Hallberg. Damian lunged forward trying to snatch the paper, but I pulled it away. Do that again, I warned, and I'll call security. People were watching now. I leaned closer, voice like venom wrapped in silk. You stole from him. But this time we're not waiting for karma. I didn't file a lawsuit immediately. No, that would have been too kind. Instead, I leaked the patent conflict details to every tech blog, university forum, and business journalist I could find. Articles started popping up like wildfire. Nexenvolt's founding prototype under scrutiny. Patent scandal. Did Damian Holt steal clean tech IP? Suddenly, Grayson Locke wasn't smiling anymore. In fact, he ghosted Damian entirely. No calls. No meetings. Just a polite email stating further review required. Nexenvolt's investor page went offline the next day. By the weekend, Damian was back to where he'd started. Alone. And still he tried to reach me. One night, I came back to find him standing at the gates of the Cross estate, looking like the past itself. Ragged, desperate, delusional. Vivian, he called. Let's talk. I didn't move. You have to know I didn't mean to hurt you, he said, voice cracking. Back then I was scared. I didn't have anyone. But you had me, I said flatly. I thought you'd always be there. That was your mistake. I still remember everything, he continued, stepping forward. The necklace you gave me for my birthday. The note you left in my locker junior year. My love is yours always. My lips curled. And then you sold that necklace, forged my signature, and framed my father for insider trading. His face paled. You didn't come here to talk, Damian, I said. You came to plead. I need help. Then call your investor. He left. I smiled. Then you're out of options. That weekend, Cross & Company officially absorbed Whitmore Energy Solutions into a full joint venture. Caleb was named Chief Innovation Officer. I was appointed strategic director. The announcement made national news. Damian? He disappeared. Some said he fled Eastwell. Others claimed he was trying to pitch Nexenvolt to foreign firms, but every door was already closed, thanks to the press storm I had quietly nurtured. The boy who once stood at the top of the school steps sneering at my love was now nowhere to be seen. He had burned every bridge. And I'd made sure of it. One evening, Caleb and I were reviewing data projections at the lab when he paused, looking at me thoughtfully. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "What?" "Everything you gave him. All that time. The pain." I considered it. "Not anymore," I said. "Because every time he tried to bury me." I looked up, eyes fierce. I grew roots. The whispers had turned to silence. Nexenvolt's site was gone. Damian's face disappeared from student presentations and online forums. Even the rumors dried up. It was as if Eastwell itself had collectively agreed to scrub his name from the walls. But I knew better. Silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of a predator waiting in the dark, wounded, cornered, and desperate enough to bite. And this time, Damian Holt wasn't just broke. He was imploding. It started with a single email. Subject: urgent. Nexenvolt legal obligations. From Grayson Locke's legal counsel. To Damian Holt. CC 3 law firms. 1 private collector. 1 debt enforcement agency. The email leaked. Not by accident. The details were grim. Locke had pulled the remaining funds. Damian now owed $300,000 in breach of contract penalties. On top of that, a second claim had been filed for IP infringement, led by none other than the Carrick Foundation. His rescue investor from earlier had decided to kick him while he was down. But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reputation. About leverage. About public spectacle. He tried to cheat the system and steal from those smarter than him. Now the system was dragging him back by the throat. "Have you seen this?" Caleb walked into the lab holding a printed article from Eastwell Business Daily. I nodded. "It's poetic, really." He shook his head, half amused, half cautious. "Do you think he'll go after you?" "Let him try." Caleb gave me a side glance. "You know, sometimes I forget how terrifying you can be." "I'm done being polite." "You never really were." I smirked. He wasn't wrong. 2 weeks later, the inevitable happened. I received a private call from one of Cross and Company's security personnel stationed at the entrance of our main headquarters. "There's someone outside the building. He says his name is Damian Holt. He's refusing to leave." I paused. "Is he alone?" "Yes." "He seems distressed." "Of course he is. Keep him out." But Damian didn't stop there. He began sending emails, first to me, then to my father, and eventually to Caleb. The tone shifted quickly. First he was begging for a meeting. Then threatening exposure. Then sobbing apologies. He'd clearly lost whatever scraps of dignity he had left. I didn't respond. But Caleb did. One afternoon, I opened my inbox and found a message. From Caleb Reeves. Subject: Effie, Damian's final move. Attached was a forwarded message Damian had sent him. "I know Vivian's just using you. You're a project to her, not a partner. She doesn't care about you. He just wants to win. She's no better than me. Let's burn her empire down together. You and me, proof that she's not untouchable." I stared at the words, blinking once. Then I laughed. Because Damian really didn't understand the kind of man Caleb was. Caleb's reply had been short and brutal. "The difference between you and me, Damian, is that I know who fed me when I was starving. I don't bite the hand that saves me. I'm not a parasite, I'm a man." From that point on, Damian vanished completely. No one saw him at Northbridge. His campus housing expired. Word spread that he'd sold everything of value. His laptop, his phone, even the watch he once flaunted, and skipped out on rent. I didn't bother to track him. I didn't need to. Because if you leave a snake cornered and starving long enough, it'll crawl back to the last place it felt power. And I knew exactly where that was. Mid-autumn in Eastwell was always chilly, the air sharp with frost and the scent of dying leaves. Our villa sat on the edge of the valley, golden trees lining the long gated driveway. That night, I returned home from a long meeting with our PR team. Cross and Company had just announced a multi-year green initiative in partnership with Whitmore Labs. Our valuation had doubled. And I was named in Eastwell's 30 under 30 innovators list. I stepped out of the car. And there he was. Damian. Sitting on the cold stone steps of our gate, hunched and hollow-eyed. He looked like a ghost wearing the skin of the boy I once loved. His blazer was wrinkled. His shoes were cracked at the sole. His hands trembled around a near-empty bottle of water. The headlights illuminated him fully, and for a second he flinched, as if the light itself burned. He stood up slowly. And then he smiled. Not a real smile. Not even a fake one. The kind of smile someone gives when they know there's nothing left to lose. You came, he croaked. No, I said calmly. I live here. I waited, he muttered. I knew you'd come eventually. What do you want, Damian? He stepped forward. You win, okay? You destroyed me. Is that what you wanted to hear? No, I said coldly. That was just the beginning. My father came out next, followed by 2 security guards. What's going on? He asked, confused. Damian turned toward him, eyes wide. You've come to take me, haven't you? What the hell is he talking about? My dad muttered. Damian collapsed to his knees, clutching at his head. It's true. I tampered with your car. That year. I loosened the brakes. You were supposed to crash. Both of you. My mother, who had just stepped outside, gasped and stumbled back in horror. You what? I wanted the company, Damian sobbed. I thought if they died I'd inherit it through Vivian. I didn't even think you'd survive. But then you did. And she stayed with me. And I. He began screaming. Rambling. Cursing. Begging. You came back to haunt me, didn't you? He howled, pointing at me. You're reborn. You were sent here to destroy me. I didn't answer. Because some truths don't need confirming. I simply pulled out my phone. And the debt collectors I'd been tracking him with for weeks stepped into view from the shadows. 3 men. Suits. Gloves. Calm voices. Mr. Holt, one of them said. It's time. No, wait, Vivian, please. Goodbye, Damian. No, Vivian, we were husband and wife once. Doesn't that mean anything? I was wrong. I'll change. He dropped to the ground, clawing at the gravel. I'm sorry. Please. I'll do anything. Don't let them take me. I turned my back and walked into the house. His screams echoed down the driveway. That night I sat in my room in silence. The fire in the hearth crackled. My mother sat beside me quietly knitting. My father watched the news. And I stared at the flames. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt something. But I didn't. Because vengeance doesn't always come with euphoria. Sometimes, it just leaves a hollow space where pain used to be. And even that was a gift. Later that week my mother told me Emily Holt tried to come visit. Riley. The last leech still clinging to the rotting tree that was the Holt family. Apparently she came sobbing to the front gate, claiming their mother was on her deathbed and they couldn't afford the hospital fees. She even called me sister-in-law. My mother threw her out without blinking. We weren't just done. We were finished. That same day, I heard Mrs. Holt had passed away in a rented single-room flat on the edge of town. No funeral. No service. Just silence. The landlord reportedly said, "Good riddance." I didn't attend. Instead I focused on what mattered. Cross & Company went public 2 months later. Our clean tech division, managed by Caleb, drew international investment. Our market share exploded. Caleb and I flew to Geneva to present at the Global Sustainability Summit. He wore a suit I'd picked out. I wore a navy blue gown. We weren't just partners in business anymore. We were partners in rebirth. One night as we stood overlooking the lake after the summit, Caleb said softly, "Do you still think about him?" I didn't have to ask who. Sometimes, I admitted. But not because I miss him. He waited. I think about how far I let myself fall. And how I didn't even know I had the strength to rise. Caleb took my hand. "And now?" he asked. I looked at him, my real ally, my chosen future. "Now," I said, "I build higher. There are monsters who wear masks. And then there are the ones who rip off their own skin just to make you look." That was Damian Holt now. No longer a villain hiding behind charm, but a shattered mirror of his former self, each jagged edge reflecting his brokenness. I thought I had already seen the worst of him. I was wrong. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival. The night the moon hung full and solemn over Eastwell. Our villa was filled with warmth, my parents laughing in the dining room, the scent of lotus pastries and plum wine in the air, the soft clinking of porcelain as we toasted to everything we had rebuilt. This was the life I had fought to reclaim. No ghosts. No shadows. Just peace. Until the knock came. 3 hard raps against our front gate. The security team had been tight since Damian's breakdown. No one got close without approval. But somehow he had slipped through. A guard called me first. "Miss Cross, there's a man at the gate. He says his name is Damian Holt. He's not well." I didn't move at first. I didn't want to believe it. Not again. Not tonight. "Keep him outside," I said. "Do not let him in." But when I stepped outside to see it for myself, I froze. Damian sat slumped against the stone wall, rain drenching his shirt, his face gaunt, eyes sunken and wild. He looked less like a man and more like a dying animal, cornered, feral, desperate. The guard held the gate closed as Damian leaned forward, gripping the iron bars. "I knew you'd come," he rasped. "I didn't come," I said quietly. "You're trespassing." He laughed. A broken wet sound. "Still so cold, even after everything. What do you want?" "I just wanted to see you." "Why?" "So you'd hear it from me," he said. "The truth. All of it." I folded my arms. "I already know everything I need to." "No," he muttered. "You think you know. You don't." And then he looked me dead in the eye and said it. "I killed them." The words cracked the night open. "I tried to, anyway." He slumped to his knees, gripping his face. "I tampered with your dad's car. That year. I thought if they died you'd inherit everything. That you'd be alone, and I could control you." My stomach turned to ice. "I loosened the brakes," he whispered. "I watched them drive off. I waited for the call. I wanted them gone. Gone. So I could take everything from you." I felt my breath catch, my fists clenching. My father, my mother, they could have died. They almost did. All because of him. "I hated being reminded of what I didn't have," he went on. You were this perfect thing. This bright, untouchable light. Me. I was nothing. A stray dog in a borrowed uniform. So you tried to murder them," I spat. "That's your excuse?" He looked up at me, eyes glassy. "I didn't think it would go that far. I was a kid." No," I snapped. "You were cruel. Calculating. And now you're just pathetic." He clutched the bars, his voice rising. "You came back, didn't you? You were reborn to punish me." I didn't answer. Because the truth was darker than anything he could imagine. I had come back. And I had punished him. But not enough. My father stepped out next, hearing the commotion. My mother followed close behind. When they saw him, drenched, muttering hollow, they froze. "Is that?" my dad whispered. And then Damian saw them. His body jerked like he'd seen ghosts. "You," he gasped. "You're alive." "We were never dead," my father said coldly. "You just failed." Damian dropped to the ground. He began sobbing, scratching at the wet stone like he wanted to dig himself into it. "You've come to collect me," he mumbled. "The debt. The blood. I knew it would come." "Call the police," my mother said sharply. "No," I said. "I've already called someone better." And just as I said it, 3 black cars rolled down the street. Debt collectors. Private agents. Men who didn't ask questions and didn't blink at tears. They stepped out, calm and silent. Damian flinched. "No, no, not again, Vivian, please, please." He reached through the bars, grabbing my wrist. I stared down at the shaking hand that once wore a watch I had gifted him. The same hand that had signed contracts with blood and lies. And I pulled away. "You once said I'd never find anyone better than you," I whispered. "But I did." He collapsed again, crying. "I regret it," he sobbed. "I regret everything. I was worse than a dog. Please, help me." But this time I didn't look back. I turned to the agents and gave a single nod. "Take him." They dragged him away screaming. The sound echoed into the trees, bouncing between the hills. And then, it was quiet. Truly quiet. For the first time in 2 lifetimes. Later that night my father stood beside me on the terrace, both of us watching the moon. "Is it really over?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Was it worth it?" I didn't answer right away. Because vengeance isn't about satisfaction. It's about closure. About ending the loop where someone else's actions rule your life. I don't hate him anymore, I finally said. My father looked at me. Then maybe that's the real victory. A week passed. And then she came. Riley Holt. Dragging her suitcase, standing at the gate like some tragic heroine. Except her makeup was smudged, her clothes were mismatched designer knockoffs, and her shoes had holes in the soles. She had fallen far. And she still hadn't learned. She walked right up to the front gate intercom and pressed the buzzer. Vivian, she said sweetly into the speaker. It's Riley. I need your help. I was already watching from the monitor. Let me guess, I replied. Your mother's in the hospital again? You're homeless. Damian disappeared and left you nothing? Her lips twitched. He's gone. I don't know where. But you were always kind. You were supposed to be family. You called me a gold-digging fake and clapped when I almost jumped from a rooftop. I was young. No, Riley. You were greedy. She sobbed. Please. At least help my mother. She needs dialysis. She's dying. I paused. And then calmly said, she already died last week. Alone. In a rental flat you abandoned her in. Riley froze. I know, I added. Because the hospital called me when you listed me as her emergency contact and then blocked their number. Her eyes widened. He tried to speak. I cut her off. Security is coming. If you're still here in 5 minutes, they'll remove you. You're heartless. I smiled. No. I just finally learned who deserves my heart. She didn't last 5 minutes. The following month, Caleb and I presented at the International Clean Energy Summit. Our lab's battery technology had been adopted for use in emergency rural medical units. Our name was listed on a UN innovation grant. Cross & Company and Whitmore Energy were featured in Forbes under Top 10 Partnerships Reshaping the Green Economy. As we walked off stage, applause still ringing in our ears, Caleb laced his fingers through mine. Are you still carrying any of it? He asked softly. The past. He nodded. I looked up at him. No, I said. Only the lessons. That night, as the summit ended and fireworks burst over Geneva's quiet lake, I stood with Caleb on a balcony wrapped in golden light. He turned to me, eyes filled with everything I never thought I deserved. You know, he said, when I first met you I thought you were like them. I was. No, he corrected gently. You were something sharper. Someone buried under betrayal. And now. He smiled. Now you're the woman who buried the past and bloomed anyway. Power doesn't always announce itself with thunder. Sometimes it walks into the room quietly. On confident heels. With a pen. And an army behind a signature. This was the version of me I never thought I'd live to see. Not the broken girl begging a boy to stay, but the woman whose name could open doors, shift markets and change lives. I didn't just survive Damian Holt. I outgrew him. And now I stood at the top of the world, looking down at the empire I had rebuilt piece by ruthless piece. It had been exactly 3 years since I was reborn. In that time, Cross & Company had gone from a legacy conglomerate to one of the fastest-growing green tech corporations in Asia. Our acquisition of Whitmore Labs made headlines. Government grants poured in. Research contracts expanded globally. Our solar battery tech was now powering over 120,000 low-income homes. We weren't just thriving. We were leading. And through it all, Caleb Reeves stood by me. Not behind me. Not in front of me. Beside me. Ready. Caleb's voice snapped me from my thoughts. We stood backstage at the Eastwell Summit where I was about to deliver the keynote speech. The theme, Legacy Through Resilience. How do I look? I asked. He grinned. Like someone who doesn't lose. I adjusted the sleeve of my cream blazer and stepped into the light. The crowd was silent as I approached the podium. Hundreds of faces. Executives. Innovators. Journalists. Critics. I began. 3 years ago I stood at the edge of a rooftop and thought my life was over. But life has a strange way of giving second chances. I took mine, and I used it to become someone I could be proud of. This empire wasn't born from luck. It was born from fire. From betrayal. From loss. And from the unshakable belief that I would not be buried by it. I saw Caleb standing near the side of the stage, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, proud. Fierce. After the speech, we returned to the Cross and Company penthouse, where a private after-party was underway. The guest list included ambassadors, partners, even a few Hollywood celebrities who wanted in on the next clean energy wave. I was mid-conversation with the Minister of Sustainable Development when a quiet voice cut through the hum. "You've become everything we said you couldn't." I turned. It was Professor Hallberg, the man who had once doubted me, who had questioned my every move. Now he offered a slow smile and extended his hand. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "People often are," I replied, shaking it. Later that night I stood alone on the penthouse balcony, looking down at Eastwell's glittering skyline. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She died. No funeral. No will. Just a bed and a broken name. R.H. Riley Holt. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then deleted the message. The Holt family had finally extinguished itself, and I felt nothing. Just peace. A month passed. One morning, Caleb invited me to a quiet hike in the hills behind our research facility. It was early spring, the path littered with fallen cherry blossoms. He didn't speak much at first, just held my hand and walked. Eventually he stopped. "This," he said, pointing to a gentle curve in the hillside, "is where I want to build the greenhouse." "For the medical garden?" I asked. He nodded. "For the remote hospitals. Drought-resistant. Solar-fed. Fully automated." I smiled. "Let's do it." But he didn't move. Instead he reached into his jacket, pulled out a small dark box. I froze. He opened it. Inside sat a simple gold ring, elegant, unflashy, real. "I know we weren't born the same way. I know I wasn't the first person you loved." He stepped closer. "But I want to be the last." The wind shifted. Cherry petals blew between us. And I, Vivian Cross, reborn heiress, ruthless strategist, empire builder, felt my heart soften for the first time in forever. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just whispered, "Yes." And meant it. The wedding was small. No media. No press release. Just a garden, close friends, and vows exchanged beneath an arch of white orchids and wind chimes. I wore my mother's earrings. He wore the tie I once gave him before our first research presentation. We didn't need 1,000 guests. We just needed each other. After the wedding, Caleb and I moved into a glass villa nestled near the research valley. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't enormous. But it was ours. We spent mornings in the lab, afternoons in meetings, and evenings cooking dinner together. Usually something burnt and hilarious. One night I found a letter tucked into my jewelry drawer. Caleb's handwriting. "You always said your love was used up. I hope I've proven you wrong. You are not made of pieces left behind. You are the whole story." And then one spring morning I got a call from a hospital director. "Your funding saved 4 premature babies this week. The solar incubators you sponsored prevented hypothermia. We owe you our thanks." I hung up, tears in my eyes. Because this was what power was for. Not revenge. Not wealth. But impact. A year later, on the anniversary of the first time Damian betrayed me, I returned to the rooftop. Just once. For closure. I stood where I once stood, broken and invisible, waiting for someone who never came. This time I stood in heels, in sunlight, in triumph. I looked out over Eastwell and whispered, "Thank you for forgetting me." Because if he hadn't, I never would have remembered who I really was. The end.